is predicting warmer temperatures in much of the country and below normal precipitation in the nation's southern half. That's bad news for the Mississippi River, whose levels are at historic lows. Morgan Chesky is in Louisiana. Morgan, you've been out looking at the impact of all this.
Yeah, listen, we have, and it's an absolutely heartbreaking sight. Mississippi riverbeds, now riverbanks, as a result of this deepening drought. On a typical day, the water line for the Mississippi should be anywhere from 15 to 20 feet above my head. But today, this massive river is now running dangerously low. Tonight, the mighty Mississippi brought to its knees by drought. Massive barges carrying crops or steel slowed or even stuck. If one of these breaks off, you run the risk of having to shut down a whole section.
You do potentially, depending on the severity of where it breaks off.
We joined Coast Guard Lieutenant Commander Mary Gilday on the water near New Orleans, where traffic slowed due to the crisis upstream. The problem is especially bad near Memphis, where water levels are dropping to lows not seen in 70 years.
Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's bad. We know how important this economic impact is to the United States.
The river's low levels could lead to economic crisis. The Mississippi supports a $12.6 billion shipping industry and tens of thousands of jobs. 60% of all grain exported from the United States is shipped on the river. But today, 127 vessels and more than 1,800 barges are backed up at 4 waterway closures.
I mean, I've never seen the river this low before.
In Arkansas, the rivers dropped so low, farmer Roger Smith had to put his soybean harvest on hold. Now unable to wait any longer and without a storage facility, he can't use the river to move his crop.
Causing us to even lose money, on the crop that we grew.
Smith estimates he'll take a nearly $40,000 loss. Back on the water.
With the current forecast, I don't see it getting any better.
A problem that deepens as a river disappears. Morgan Chesky, NBC News, Baton Rouge.
New anti-government protests to tell you about in Iran today, where police say they arrested at least 57 people. The demonstrations are being driven largely by women. Tonight, Andrea Mitchell speaks with some Iranian-American women about the growing unrest.
3 Iranian-American women whose hearts are in Iran, but who are experiencing today's protests from thousands of miles away.
It's heart-wrenching to watch them go through what they are doing, but they realize that tomorrow is a better day if they are free.
Obviously, of course, it's really sad to see what's happening to them, but I'm so proud and I'm so embarrassed that my generation, people like me, didn't do anything for these girls, because they're changing the life for their children and grandchildren. It's not just about them.
These women are all in their 30s. Benaz and Gholi, born in Iran, spending time growing up there. In contrast, Shayla, born to Iranian immigrants in the U.S.
I'm just in awe. I cannot believe the bravery that they've shown. Women that are younger than me to go out in the street and to really risk their lives for just basic freedoms that we take for granted is incredibly moving.
Gholi's awakening came when she was only 5 on a family vacation outside Iran.
My mom didn't wear any scarf. I was shocked. I was so afraid. I yelled and I told my mom that you forgot your scarf. She started crying because she had no idea that her daughter doesn't know a normal life, normal society. She thought that everywhere in the world, we have to wear a scarf. We have to have a double life.
Was that just the given that you would have your head covered and follow all the other rituals, the rules?
As a child who didn't understand what that did to my identity, I thought that was part of growing up, to have to wear a headscarf in my head every time I leave the house.
Tell me what it was like for you growing up.
The main thing, the most important thing is living this double life. The not living your true self.
Now they see a tipping point.
I believe that this is the end. We have to be hopeful that there is no turning back and a revolution will happen.
The new generation, either they don't have the opportunity or they do, but they don't want to leave their country. They want to fix it. They're there to fight to take their country back.
Now coming together to exhibit Iranian art inspired by the moment.
Art has always been a universal language, and it's been so incredible to see these artists be able to capture the emotion of a moment in time in one piece.
supporting their Iranian sisters in the best way they can. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
All right, I'm going to move on here. I wasn't actually planning on putting that on this particular recording, but that's all right. I got some things I need to say to my viewers in response towards everything going on that it just got through talking about as far as the Mississippi River. I took notice towards how quickly that the grass went from being plentiful green to bam, no longer growing, to the point of turning brown. And it happened so suddenly that it was unusual, actually, in the way that it done it. And you can't really say that we have already gotten down into the mid-20s, because usually the mid-20s is what it takes to kill vegetation like this. Some of this stuff's got crabgrass in it. It's got Johnson grass in it. It's got everything in the world that you can think of. My tree right there usually sheds whenever it comes a freeze, and it has begun to shed, but it hadn't shedded like it usually sheds. It usually sheds, wake up one morning and every leaf on it is gone. So what are you trying to say pertaining to how dry it is in regards towards the Mississippi River? Well, I'm going to show you something here. I had to go and pull it out a while ago whenever the recording come on about the mighty Mississippi. I knew the Mississippi River was getting recordly low, but I didn't know that it had actually become that low. But I dug something out a while ago. Basically a poster that I had on one of my automobiles years and years ago. And this was really and truly way before I can get that set there like that. This was way before. That's going to mess it up. Oh man, I don't know what to do with it being like that. I don't think I've ever seen it like that before. It's still recording. It's just not recording like I want it to. Anyways, I'm going to lay this phone up here. Hopefully it's getting what I want it to get temporarily. These are all papers here pertaining to the lives that has lived in this area, pertaining to the Sidonians and the Hopinians, those that's lived in Northwest Tennessee way before I probably ever come into the world. But these are some articles. Right there's my grandfather's store that they called Lim Store. And if you'll read right here, if you can see it, I think you can, pertaining to Jeff Jackson, right here, Mr. Jeff Jackson, towards what he would do during the episodes of the storm. I mean, during the episodes of the Great Depression before it actually set in. And of course, my Uncle Leon Jackson took it over. But what I was wanting to show you, in which I hope this is recording properly. I don't know enough about this stuff to operate it like I should. That's where I'd really like to have a hand in having some sort of professionalism pertaining to all this high-tech stuff that I have been having to become acquainted with. And we're talking about an individual that basically struggled his way through school up into the 8th grade. And, oh, there we go. One of my baseball bats fell. And had to drop out because of surrounding circumstances. Was basically making a living for myself. But this was the deal that I had on my automobile, which was a Dodge Omni, white in color. After the occurrences took place in my life in 89 and in 90, this was what I put on the side of my vehicle, in which it did come true, towards days left, deadline, no sword, no rain, Mississippi River will start to dry up. No sword, no peace. Now this was directed to young Bush. No, wait a minute. This was directed to Mr. H.W. Bush in the early 90s, 91. Sword symbolizing peace on earth. Why won't the Bush family, I didn't say family, I just added that. Why won't the Bush family, our leaders, put it back into the box? This has been extraordinarily extensive in my life, and it is only by the hand and the will of God that first of all, that I still have this piece of paper, but that some of my articles proven that in which what I had talked about towards being able to prove my cases. And there's my grandfather, Miss Audale. I figured that was probably taken somewhere around 1940, maybe even 1950. There's Jeffrey Jackson that burned up, I think it was Jeff, that burned up in the fire. Maxie lost whole family in regards to that. That was Maxie's father and mother, Leon Jackson. This is my mother. This is my brother, pertaining to he had a bow, and then he went forth conquering and to conquer, representing the first seal being opened. Jesse Jordan, which would be my great-grandfather on my mother's side, that is buried over in Sunnyside Cemetery over in Kenton, Tennessee. We're also kin to the Rings. Her sister was Lily Ring. And then, like I said, I'm truly sorry that the camera has messed up. Under the proper and right circumstances, I'm sure. Sure that this is the first time I've ever seen my camera do this. That was a bad picture of me. I think that was a good, decent picture of me right there. Miss Jackson, Shirley K. Jackson, that divorced me twice. There she is again. There's pictures of my dad somewhere down on the Mississippi River catching fish. It's been a long time since I've seen these pictures. There's my brother David. Greg Mayo, that was David Mayo's first son. There's a picture of David again. That's a good picture of him. There's a picture of David again. I think it's David. David and Shane Jordan looks a lot the same. There I am again. Here I am on a trip right here. I don't know where I went. I'd have to look at it further. This I don't recognize. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look further into that. It's kind of like some commercialized stuff or something. This is the first time that I've opened this up and looked at it in years. Let's see who we got here now. That looks like Elvis Presley. David must have taken some of these pictures. Inglewood Drive, Kenton, Tennessee. And that was his Kenton, Tennessee, 3283, telephone number. Okay, that's whenever that was taken. December the 10th, location Kenton. Subject, Christmas decorations. I don't know where that was. I didn't take it. Must have been somebody had their house decorated over in Kenton somewhere like that. And these pictures here, I think I took while I was down in Florida, but I ain't sure. But the main thing that I wanted you to look at was basically what you just looked at in regards towards this information about our history here in this area. And a lot of people don't know how valuable that a lot of this stuff is. And it may not be valuable to nobody else, but it's valuable to us pertaining to who lived here, what that they was about, what their names was. R.J. Cooper, Dawson, some of these pictures has faded. Mr. Knight, Alice, Linsford, Edwards, Wickerson, Jack Mike, Harrison, Tommy Harrison, Gittermore, another Caps, Barry, Caps, I think it said Caps, yeah. Taylor, Cotter, Hawkins, Hintz, Taylor. May have been some of the same bunch that I run into up there in LBL. He was a Gary Hawkins. May have been a branch off from him. Max Morgan. Oh, he looks different now, don't he? Yep, there's Max. Tony Harrison. Morgan. James Morgan. I remember him from years back. Another Morgan. James Harold Morgan. Pleasant Grove. Horn. Mr. Probably Bill Horn. Getting to Bill Horn some way or another. Freeman. I knew some Freemans. They went to church down here at Sidonia Baptist Church. Dawson. Ed Dawson. Sidonia Baptist Church. Esser. Summers. James Harold Morgan. I wouldn't have thought of these people for $1 million. So it does justify today in having digital cameras to be able to correspond with some of this history around here. That way it didn't get all lost. I can't even read that. Looks like at one time this material must have gotten wet. I can't even separate the paper. And then it probably got real hot. Maybe that is just one piece of paper. And then it got super hot. Can't make out the name. VBS. Looks like Crafts. Looks like a knight. Something car. There were some Carsons up here, maybe kin to them. See, you never know whenever you document people in regards towards who they are and where they're from, what their names was, what part of a contributing fact that they had to our great nation, America, here. You never know whenever one may stumble up onto this type of information that will be beneficial towards keeping the record straight one day in regards towards telling our side of the story or telling our history and who we are, what we're about here in this particular area. I didn't even know this was in there. I'm glad that I got it out. But the main concern that I wanted to show was how quickly that the grass around here died, in which right now we're on a major fire ban towards no fires, especially if the wind's blowing extremely hard. You sure don't want to burn nothing whenever it's this dry outside if the wind's blowing real hard. But my main thing was to show you, I thought it was in the late 80s, and since 1991, I believe that I have seen the mighty Mississippi get as low, or right about as low as it is right now. And this will make either the third or the fourth time towards it becoming this low, which is very abnormal in response towards a river continuously getting that low again and again. If it's any type of indication towards the global warming, Christmas plays. If it's any indication towards the global warming and the droughts that we've been suffering through, Randy, Kim, Cooper, Charles, Linda, Davis, Barry, Kim Caps. I went to school with Kim Caps. Claude, Pearl Hawkins, Todd Cooper, Marina Luckley, I think that's their names. Harrison, another Harrison. Catherine Harrison, Emila Reynolds, I already looked at that. Missionary Baptist Church, 150 years of ministry, September the 16th to 1852, which was before the Civil War, to September the 16th, 2002, is whenever this material was coming to an existence, towards somebody basically doing history work before and after. But the point that I'm trying to make is, in 1991, in regards towards global warming, only a very, very few people had already discovered that there was some major changes going on pertaining to environmental crisisness. And it wasn't until long about the year 2000, whenever Al Gore ran for president, that's whenever it more or less got on the front burner, but no one never done nothing about it. So the predictions of the Mississippi River running dry, are beginning to start to run dry, has been in the making since 1991, 2001, 2021, 31 years now, since basically the sword was confiscated by the United States government illegitimately by Secret Service down in Madison County, Tennessee, and Jackson, Tennessee in 1989. Whenever I made that poster was after my third and fourth wife that I got married to, Shirley K. Jackson. Whenever I was on my way to Wheeling, West Virginia, whenever they stopped me and made up bogus charges that I was on my way to take out George Walter Bush in regards towards me going to be an assassin, towards assassinating the United States president. Now look at there, I sure enough drawed it up then, didn't I? May have. See, I didn't know that you could do that. I stopped it temporarily, and then I let it go again. Now there's an arrow right here. Let's see what that does. That just moves it from one side to another, which I guess you probably can't even tell that. But the facts is in the proof is in the pudding pertaining to the facts in regards towards the occurrences that we have seen again and again and again. I'm 61 years old, and like I said, it's very unusual in a lifetime to see a major corridor like that or a river like that to go almost completely dry, and to think that I've seen it, I know 3 times, possibly 4 in my lifetime. And of course it's got super low before, but it's one thing for it to get super low, and it's another thing for it to start breaking records. And that's what they was talking about today, was it actually breaking all-time records going all the way back 70 years ago. And that's an extensive record to break, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I looked it up here lately, and the last drought that the Mississippi had, I think was the last extensive drought. It's been low 2 or 3 other times before, but the the lowest that it was recorded up until now, I think it was in the late 80s. I read through some material. I read through so much it's hard to remember all of it, but it's actually absolutely mind-boggling to think that the individual that's holding this camera right now, that's talking to you right now, which I realize he ain't the most best looking human being in the world, but I have tried and tried and tried to put out advisories, warnings. I have tried and tried and tried to tell people about these things that God had showed me, and it was either ignored, overlooked, laughed at, made fun of, or sniggered at. Now, I put out some material, I guess about a week or so ago, pertaining to the Mississippi River, because I was actually at the river talking to somebody. You can look it up on my YouTube platform. And me and that individual was talking about the river, and he was basically an atheist that didn't believe in God, and he had all these scientific findings and facts that he had read and convinced himself of believing. And I told the individual, because he was originally from way up in Maine somewhere, I told the guy, I said, you know what? You can't undermine God. You can't undermine the Holy Spirit. And if the Lord has pulled his hand, kind of like pulling the curtain away, in letting us see these things that's coming about, he's doing this for a purpose or a reason. And it's not so that one particular country or agency or organization will go through more suffering than the other. These things was already predicted in the Bible, that Jesus talked about in the last days, that these would be the signs of his coming, that there would be great, humongous sorrows that would fall upon to the land, to the degree of woe be unto the inhabitants here upon to the planet, and that if we didn't unite in seeing a true Holy Ghost anointing revival, that these occurrences was only going to get worse and worse and worse. And of course, if you add the river, one of our major corridors, that I didn't realize how significant that the Mississippi River was up until just a few years ago, especially whenever the people up here in Kentucky, I was trying to help them, and they was saying that I had made threats towards possibly going to cause major electrical disturbances by blowing up the Kentucky Dam, in which I never said anything, nothing even remotely close to being that. The only thing I told them people, that God had showed me that there was going to be electrical disturbances. Well, the Tennessee River, the year that happened, which was 2007, if you'll look at the charts, going down into Huntsville, Alabama, got so low that year that they had to shut down one of the dams because the turbines was getting so hot, because the water had gotten so low and so hot that they basically had to shut her down. We know now, looking at the Colorado River over by Hoover Dam, that if those occurrences continue on the level that they're going on, I think they've already lost about 175 foot of water, which is the equivalency of a 17-story building. Yeah, that's no longer in the Great Colorado. Within possibly another year or so, they're going to have to shut down the turbines on the Hoover Dam that produces electricity for millions and millions and millions of people. Plus the fact, if you look at how abnormal that our weather patterns has become, and it wasn't just the ice storm up here in Kentucky that hit, because sometimes we get ice storms down here in Tennessee too as well. But I think it was the year before last, whenever a cold front went all the way down towards Brownsville, Texas, that basically put a strain on their system down there to the point that they locked up. Their system shut down because so many people was in need of heat, and so many people was using heat. And I'm pretty sure they probably don't use the type of insulation down south as they do up in the northern ranges, because of not ordinarily having that type of cold weather. But I think it killed almost 1,000 people that either froze to death, or those that had medical problems, or those that breathed in a lot of carbon dioxide towards generators that was running towards trying to produce enough energy to do that. We are seeing these abnormalities, imbalances, that there's no way to express it or explain it other than global warming. Scientists has been noticing the earth getting warmer and warmer and warmer, which is causing basically the icebergs in the north and probably down towards the south too. I ain't read up about all that down there, but it's causing massive amounts of ice that's now melting, that is raising the ocean level to the point that to where any of these coastlining areas are more prone or are hesitant towards receiving flooding, especially if there's a high tide along with a full moon that draws that tide, that just from the wave action itself can cause coastal flooding. And of course, if there's a storm out there that's kicking up a lot of 15, 25 foot, 30 foot waves, if you'll combine all those three together, you got flooding problems. And that's what we're starting to see right now. But God has also showed me another thing pertaining to the global warming, that the natural resources that we're pulling out of the ground is causing the heat to expand. And of course, oil is a friction remover that reduces friction. And the more friction that you got towards rocks sliding back and forth together and moving up and down and stuff, I mean, the earth is basically like a living organism. Whenever you drain all the oil out of the earth, and you no longer have that friction barrier there, things is going to start heating up from the inside out, not necessarily from the outside in. Now, I'm not saying that things ain't occurring on the outside pertaining to our upper atmosphere that's affecting our weather patterns pertaining to it either being entirely too dry or entirely too wet, because they're claiming that heat causes evaporation, and if the atmosphere has become much hotter than what it normally is, and the heat goes on up into the atmosphere, first of all, it's going to hold more water up there, and secondly, whenever it does release it, it's going to release it all at one time like a deluge. That's what happened over here in Middle Tennessee about a year and 2 or 3 months ago, and that's what happened also this year over in Kentucky. That's what's happened in places like Jackson, Mississippi, places in Texas and Louisiana flooded again this year. Of course, they've been flooded down there probably 3 or 4 different times, major flooding. We've seen where Afghanistan has flooded. The people in Puerto Rico just got to recently being flooded pertaining to a hurricane over there. And we're not, for some reason, we are not realizing the urgency towards going green. And I know a lot of people, they think, oh, this is just a political move. Oh, this is just some way or another that the Democrats can pull a rabbit out of their hat to be able to convince a lot of people of going either battery or going solar or other types of alternative energy sources. But no, this is really happening. This is not only really happening, but this was predicted for it to happen. As I just got through showing you, that poster, I actually had 2 of them, one on both sides of the automobile. As I was going up into Washington, D.C., I had to divert around Secret Service, Homeland Security, the field office up here in Nashville, Tennessee. So I had to go over to the Mississippi, go up through Missouri, back up through Illinois, and on up through Indiana and Ohio. And I actually wound up in a parade in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I got pulled over in Ohio just before getting to the Wheeling, West Virginia state line by 2 state troopers that told me that if I had any sense, I'd turn my automobile back around and go back to Tennessee. These people was dead set that they was going to do what they was going to do. And the whole time I was on my way to Washington, D.C., not to assassinate an American president, but to try to prevent or keep this country from making the wrong turn in which it did towards going to war with Saddam Hussein and other places over there with Desert Shield and Desert Storm, that even President Ford, especially whenever the ordeal happened over in Afghanistan, that President Ford was solely against, but he didn't want those records revealed until after he was dead, because he was frightened of his own government at that time, because he knew the illegitimacies in how things was being run, especially with and by Homeland Security, Secret Service. They're the ones that has basically tried to ruin this ministry towards intervening, towards using malice behavior in not only what they did not do in 1988, whenever 9 tapes wound up going to the White House, but they purposely targeted me in different aspects of my life. They have purposely tried to bring harm and hurt to the founder. That way, if they could have basically got me out of the eyes of the general population, I wouldn't have been effective towards doing what the Lord had called me to do. Well, if you study the Bible, all them prophets of God, all them teachers, all them ministers, including Jesus, was a target down here. And of course, Christ said to leap for joy, for your reward shall be great in heaven whenever they persecute you unjustly like this. For so did they, according to Christ, have done it to the prophets before you. I just don't understand how that the meteorologist working at WPSD News or WBBJ News down here in Jackson, or all these other news agencies here in America, can see something happening that's going to be possibly horrendous, horrifying, bad, and they put out weather alerts, and people don't go trying to arrest them people. People don't go and try to harm them people. A matter of fact, about half the time they miss it more than they hit it, because the weather is so unpredictable. But I don't see nobody trying to ruin those people's lives. But yet, no, that industry is set up to where it will help the citizens. It's a service that we have paid for that hopefully will help to save lives. If the Mississippi River gets historically low like it is right now, and it stays that low during the winter months, it won't cause millions of dollars worth of damage. It will cause billions of dollars worth of damage, because there's so many factors that river helps to produce, just like all the fishing down on the Gulf with all the oysters and the crabs and the shrimp and stuff. That's going to affect all that, because now they won't be getting that same nutrients like they did. And instead of the shrimp being that big, they'll be like that big, providing that they live. And whenever the water becomes stagnant like that, it actually reduces a great deal of the oxygen protein in that body of water that fish and other creatures of the deep depend upon towards having. And if they don't have oxygen in the water, they die. Not counting how much it is going to cost extra for us to have to put this stuff on truck, okay, put it on rubber, and instead of sending it up and down the river on these big barges, they're going to have to do all this stuff now by truck, if it remains as low or it even stays this way like it is right now, without it even getting no lower. And as you've seen the weather report, NOAA put out that it was going to be exceptionally warmer this year, and I guess even they're predicting for it to be drier, a drier winter. So by doing so, we're just adding that much more insult to injury pertaining to the high price gases, pertaining to the inflation that has risen now 8.5% in the past 3 months, as far as high prices, grocery prices, etc. that's raised. It's just going to add that many more problems pertaining to the farming industry, the agriculture industry next year. If the ground hasn't adequately got the moisture that it should, it affects the growing season for next year, and it affects the growing season for the year after. And it ain't counting the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage that it can cause pertaining to the forestry, all our parks, all our beautiful places that we have, that we take advantage of. It ain't counting what it's going to do to the damage on all the trees and stuff. So this is really and truly substantial towards taking a lick on like this that I really don't feel like America can afford. We're living in the last days. That's my point. You was warned. You was given advisories. I just proven that pertaining to some old material. And I've got pictures of my car towards it being all dressed up and having that particular poster on the automobile. So trust me, I've got adequate proof to validate my story. It's just that I hadn't got nobody's attention yet. Well, whenever things get drastically bad enough, eventually somebody will grasp towards the things that I'm telling them is in fact the gospel. And all these malicious lies that this area has talked about and put me down about, they'll pay for that one day. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors. And may heaven help us all.